Chapter 5. Naruto, for the last time, I am not going to eat that. Come on, sensei. It's really good when you try it. Believe it. Kakashi seriously doubted that. The thing the blonde boy was at the moment offering him couldn't possibly taste anything but horrible. At least it smelled absolutely terrible, even when he had his mask safely on. Naruto waved the hamburger in front of him like it would somehow make the thing more tempting. But you gotta eat something, sensei, the boy whined. It is good, really. Kakashi scowled at the thing he adamantly refused to call food. How could anyone consider that food? It certainly didn't look edible, and it smelled like it was made purely out of fat and something he didn't even want to know more precisely. According to Maiko, those things were even a rather popular food on this planet. He wondered how anyone could survive eating such things. However, the other teenagers were happily wolfing down their own meals, hamburgers and something they called French fries. Well, they looked better than the hamburgers but still smelled just as bad. Kakashi was hungry, he couldn't deny that, but he could still survive without food for a while, and he was currently very tempted to do just that. Around midday the Autobots had given them a small tour of the base. Of course the robots hadn't shown them everything, and Kakashi was more than sure the corridors still held some interesting secrets. Although he had known better than to pry, Naruto hadn't seemed to be thinking about things like that, as the blonde had just been almost euphoric when they had found out there actually was a bathroom hidden in the depths of the corridors. The place apparently was something called a missile silo and was officially off limits. That Agent Fowler fellow, Kakashi had learned, was the link between this team of alien robots and this country's government. Kakashi really was thankful the special agent had agreed to keep silent about this, as he wanted to keep as low as possible during their stay in this strange place. The thought of some unknown government officials charging into the base to restrain and interrogate them wasn't in any way pleasant. The day had continued with interesting conversations as he had listened to Maiko ramble about seemingly everything that crossed her mind to Naruto, every now and then translating Jack's or Raphael's questions for the young ninja. Kakashi had also made some inquiries to Ratchet, but the medic hadn't been too enthusiastic when the Jounin had continued to interrupt his work. During the afternoon they had realized they hadn't eaten anything for a while. Naruto had declared that he was sure to starve to death, so Maiko and Jack had left with Bumblebee to get some food. About an hour later they had returned with huge bags full of something called fast food, hamburgers, French fries, a bag full of drinks and something that was supposed to be chicken. The container had a strange symbol on the side and a smiling man, although Kakashi couldn't come up with any good reason why someone would do that. He cursed his sensitive nose as he tried to get farther away from the fast food, though it was kind of challenging as he was sitting against the wall. Naruto huffed and pretty much dumped the burger into his hands, along with a small paper bag of French fries. Come on sensei, don't be a sissy. Do you want me to tell everybody back home what a picky mouth you are? I just don't want to have a food poisoning, Kakashi thought, and scowled at his mischievously grinning student who went back to the other kids. He hadn't trained since he was a child just so he could ruin his body by eating trash like this. He sighed, suspiciously eyeing the food in his hand. He didn't want to even guess what had been stuffed between the two bread loaves. The Jounin lifted his gaze just to notice the kids were discreetly throwing glances at him. Kakashi mentally snorted. Well, guess they have the right to be curious, he thought. Well, then he would just wait for the right moment. It shouldn't take too long before the teenagers' attention would be drawn away from him. They were kids after all. And then he could glomp down his so-called meal without any curious gazes and have his mask back on before they would notice a thing. In addition to him and the teens, the base was quite empty, although not remotely silent, as Maiko and Naruto were still present. Ratchet was still doing his work in front of the computers, and RC was standing beside the displays. He had no idea where the rest of the Autobots had gone to. He had tried to listen to their conversations, but they had all spoken that English language again and Kakashi hadn't understood a thing. He would have to do something about that. Naruto was already finishing his hamburger. Man, that was good. Well, not better than ramen of course, but still. We should travel more often, Kakashi-sensei. The boy laughed. Kakashi mentally snorted, staring at his own meal. How he missed a good miso soup with some delicious eggplant. Maiko then shoved a big paper cup to Naruto's hands. Here, try this. It's Coca-Cola, you're gonna love it. Kakashi watched as the blonde boy lifted the cup and glanced inside. It's black. And sparkling. I can see the bubbles. Of course it is. Now try it. Naruto hesitantly sniffed the drink. Then he shrugged and gulped down what it seemed to be a half of the drink all at once. There was a second of silence, then dash. Naruto spat the black liquid out, coughing madly. Gwa, it burns. The whole room burst out laughing. Maiko, Jack and Raphael were practically rolling on the floor, laughing so hard it seemed to be almost painful. Kakashi tried not to choke on his laughter. Even Ratchet seemed to chuckle. RC had an unreadable expression on her face. Naruto coughed the rest of the drink out of his throat, glaring at the now half-empty cup in his hands. Then he grinned madly and joined the laughter. How could anyone like this? It's like drinking acid. Hey, it's delicious. You just have to get used to it. Naruto laughed. No way, I'll never touch that horrible stuff again. He turned back to Kakashi. Hey Kakashi-sensei, wanna try, hey? Kakashi blinked innocently, throwing the empty food wrappers to a nearby plastic bag and adjusted his mask back to its place. Yes, Naruto? How could you eat that so fast? Naruto eyed him suspiciously, as if suspecting he had hidden the food somewhere. Kakashi smiled at him, the visible eye curving happily. He was well accustomed to eating quickly as there was always someone trying to catch a glimpse of his face. The food had been horrible, he prayed he wouldn't have to eat anything like that ever again, and the speed he had wolfed it down didn't make him feel too good. But at least he had gotten some food down, if you could call it that, and his face still remained as a mystery to the children. Mission completed. It's a secret ninja skill, Naruto, the copy nin drawled in an amused tone, chuckling when the boy huffed in indignation as another one of his attempts to get a glance of his teacher's face had failed. Kakashi's gaze then moved to the girl as a thought occurred to him. Maiko, may I ask you for a favor? Maiko looked positively surprised about his words. Then her face brightened. Sure. She exclaimed, grinning widely. Kakashi's eye formed a happy arch. Could you somehow get us some language books? It would be quite nice to learn some of that English you're speaking. Of course. Maiko yelled. I'll bring them tomorrow. It's really easy to learn when you get the hang of it, really. Kakashi was sure he heard RC snort at that. But I'm no good at things like that. Naruto complained. Don't worry. We'll teach you. Maiko declared. You'll learn it in no time. Then the girl's attention shifted back to the Jounin. Hey. You. Can I ask you something? Maiko was practically yelling her question, waving a half-empty bag of French fries in Kakashi's direction and looking at him, brown eyes gleaming. Kakashi couldn't but blink at the girl's straightforwardness. Sure, the Jounin answered, scratching the back of his head. He was rather sure he already knew the questions the girl would throw at him. And as expected. What's under that mask? Another mask. Well, what's under that? My face. Why do you use it in the first place? To look mysterious. Really? No. Well, what about that headband? What's under that? It's a secret. Come on. Maiko looked like she thought he would have been obliged to reveal his secrets by now. Raphael and Jack looked at them and then at each other, clearly having no idea of what was going on, although they didn't seem to be surprised of their friend's behavior. The girl's expression brightened again. Well, can you show us some awesome ninja moves then? Do you know taekwondo? Or karate? Or can you? I know. Naruto hollered, waving his arms and interrupting Maiko's question flood. We could have a sparring match, right Kakashi-sensei? That would be so cool. Maiko yelled just as enthusiastically. Kakashi didn't know if it was possible for a robot, but he was sure he had seen RC roll her eyes at the girl's antics. Raphael and Jack seemed to finally have enough of the language they couldn't understand and tried to get Maiko to translate the talk. The copy nin mentally sighed. There would be no changing their minds now. RC didn't like this. When Maiko, Raphael and Jack had first arrived to the base, she hadn't liked that either, although she now admitted she was quite fond of the teenagers. But this was different. These people, their interdimensional quests, weren't just children in danger of getting stomped over by the Decepticons. These were trained soldiers. These guys could throw a shuriken quicker than a human eye could see and with enough force to get it impeded to the wall of the base. Not that such thing as a throwing star could do serious damage to the bots. But RC didn't believe that throwing a shuriken would be the only skill the strangers had. And that led her thoughts to the most serious problem. RC was more than sure Hatake Kakashi knew a lot more than he had so far revealed about what Ratchet had called a dimensional bridge. She had seen it in that lone eye of his. The ninja had quite an impressive indifferent gaze hiding his emotions and thoughts, but RC knew Hatake had told them practically nothing about what being a ninja in their world actually meant. The blue bot didn't like at all that there were two strangers with unknown powers that could possibly transfer themselves to other dimensions hanging around in the base. It was true they hadn't actually done anything suspicious yet, if you didn't count the fact the other wore a mask all the time, but that didn't mean they wouldn't in the future. Optimus Prime had given them time to adjust. Their leader seemed to be sure the two ninjas would share more information once they trusted the Autobots little more. RC mentally frowned. She trusted Prime with all her spark, but she still couldn't help but be suspicious about the strangers. She couldn't help but think, what if? The said ninjas were currently walking behind her as she led them to their quite humble accommodation. Their guests though didn't seem to mind the uncomfortable premises at all. Guess they had seen worse. She listened as the blonde boy rambled to the older man about the day, how cruel the basketball had been and how horrible the cola had been and how amazing it had been when Bumblebee had once again transformed to his vehicle form. The masked man listened quietly, sometimes nodding to the boy's words and every now and then managing to say something between the youth's rants. RC halted in front of the door, turning around to face the ninjas. "Man, I'm tired, and it isn't really evening yet," Naruto practically shouted, his voice echoing through the corridors. RC sighed. Were all Japanese-speaking kids this loud? Hatake also looked quite exhausted. The masked man had a dark circle under his eye and he looked just a little too pale to be diagnosed healthy. Whatever they had done or gone through to get here seemed to have taken a lot out of them. "I take it you're going to stand guard," Hatake said when the blonde had disappeared into the room. RC nodded curtly, narrowing her optics. "I'll stay here for now. And there will be someone at guard all the time, so there's no point in trying anything funny." The masked man raised one silver eyebrow. "Worried we'll sneak out during the night?" There was a hint of amusement in his tone. RC scoffed and leaned forward so that she was pretty much looming over the man who, however, didn't look too intimidated. "Listen, Prime might trust you for now, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't think that you're a serious security risk." She narrowed her blue eyes further, "if it even was possible. I think there's awfully lot that you failed to mention about yourselves earlier and I don't like that." Hatake Kakashi met her challenging gaze with a totally indifferent one. The silver-haired man looked downright bored, which annoyed RC to no end. "Well, it's not like you have revealed everything about yourselves either," he responded with a blank tone. "Isn't that quite an obvious way to act in a situation like this?" "But we happen to be in our base," the blue bot retaliated with an almost angry tone. "We are the ones who have to risk our sanctuary for strangers, soldiers nonetheless, with totally unknown skills. Skills that could possibly mess with dimensions as well and Primus knows what." "Well, it isn't like our situation here is ideal either," the ninja shot back. "What are you implying?" Hatake crossed his arms and leaned against the wall beside the door. "I come from a town full of soldiers. We are the ones keeping our country safe, with whatever means necessary." He gave RC a steady gaze. "Though we're currently not at war, we still have lots of enemies, some of them with quite atrocious goals. The man tilted his head slightly, the lone dark eye narrowing. But that doesn't somehow make us the good guys of the universe. So although there seems to be some nasty people wanting to catch us here, that doesn't mean we should blindly trust you. So you're saying that even though we saved you, offered you a shelter and gave you information of your location when you had none, we still might murder you in your sleep? RC's voice had a sharp edge in it. I'm saying that you can never know, and we'd be fools to ignore that. The silver-haired man's tone was just as acid. The corridor became silent, as the Autobot and the ninja stared at each other with tension practically crackling between them. Then the silver-haired man suddenly smiled, or at least she thought he did, the visible eye curving slightly. Well, it was nice talking to you, RC-san. See you, then. And then he was gone, the door shutting behind him, leaving the blue Autobot alone in the gloomy corridor. No, she didn't like this at all. Naruto huffed as he stepped to the room, leaving Kakashi-sensei to the corridor with RC. Whoa, he was beginning to remember the robots' names already. He was quite proud of himself as his memory didn't always work that well. The day had been quite crazy, to say the least. He was dying to know more about. Damn. What was the name of this country again? Well, anyway. He was more than looking forward to hearing more about everything. Maybe he and Kakashi-sensei would get outside soon too. And see more than just dusty dark deserts. Maybe they would meet other people. Or see some cities. Now that would be great. Naruto was already sitting on one of the empty steel tables when his teacher finally strolled inside. What took you so long, sensei? Kakashi-sensei's eye formed a cheerful crescent. I was just exchanging a few words with one of our hosts. Naruto rolled his eyes. Then he remembered what he had had to ask his sensei. Hey, Kakashi-sensei, did figure anything out yet? About why we're here, I mean. And how they could get home, but that was clear for both even when left unsaid. The Jounin didn't answer right away, walking to stand beside the wall and sitting down to lean against it. He rubbed his masked cheek and answered. Well, we managed to figure some things out already. Naruto leaned forwards, giving his sensei an expectant look. The Hotake seemed to contemplate something for a moment before speaking. Remember when I mentioned the new technique I had developed during your training with Jiraiya-sama, Naruto? The boy grinned. After we had beaten you in that bell test? Sure. Ha, that had been awesome. He and Sakura had schemed together and had finally managed to snatch those bells. The look on their teacher's face had been priceless. And judging by Kakashi-sensei's current expression, he hadn't forgotten that either. Okay, the threat of Kaka spoilers had been a low blow, but in war, everything was allowed. Yes, his teacher responded curtly but with an amused glint in his gray eye. The one I used against Deidara. Remember what it did? Kakashi-sensei rolled his eye. It's Omanshikyu Sharingan technique, an advanced form of Sharingan. It's called the Kamui, and it can teleport the targeted object to another dimension. Naruto mouthed a silent whoa, remembering the fight with the Akatsuki member. The point is, I used the very same jutsu, the Kamui, as a last resort to get rid of the ball of energy following me when we were fighting against those missing nins. Naruto nodded slowly, eyes squinting slightly. That would mean. So this is then another dimension? Seems like it. Naruto scratched the back of his head, baffled. Is this like the Kamui dimension then? The Jounin shook his head. No, the Kamui isn't that powerful of a jutsu. It wouldn't have had enough power to send us all the way here. His teacher sighed and leaned his head against the gray wall. I didn't see the seals of that unfamiliar jutsu, but I think it would have been something quite nasty. Apparently the collision gave the Kamui some boost and drained our chakra in the process, and we ended up here. Whoa, was all Naruto could say. Kakashi-sensei chuckled. They both were quiet for a moment, contemplating their rapidly growing problem. Well, guess we're not going home anytime soon, right? Naruto voiced the thoughts that were probably in Kakashi-sensei's mind as well. The Hotake nodded absent-mindedly, running a gloved hand through his silver hair. Ratchet promised to do some research about the matter, but for now, we really can't return. The silence descended to the room. After a moment, Naruto sighed and rubbed his face. Man, he was exhausted. And it wasn't even that late yet. Chakra exhaustion truly was a drag. All he wanted to do was sleep. The day had been so full of everything that he had, for a moment, forgotten how jaded he'd been. And now, when there were no robots around or he wasn't chatting with Maiko, Raph, and Jack, the weariness was returning with vengeance. Naruto tried to stifle a yawn. The blonde wondered if the Kyuubi's chakra was drained too. He suddenly frowned a little. Sensei, do you think the Kyuubi's chakra is gone too? I mean, it does have so much chakra. You think it could have been the reason why for us to end up all the way here if the portal needed so much energy? Kakashi-sensei looked at him with pride glinting in his eye. I strongly think we wouldn't have survived the trip without the demon's chakra, he said in a slightly amused tone. Or at least we wouldn't have made it all the way here and got stuck in somewhere in between. Naruto huffed. So the Ninetales saved our asses. Great. The copyman snickered. So, the younger shinobi continued, there's no way we can, send a message home? I find that unlikely, though I have something in mind that I'd like to try, but only when my chakra has returned a little. Naruto nodded slowly. I just want to make sure everyone's okay. And let Ruka-sensei know I'm fine. He worries so easily. He trailed off while talking about the person who was practically his big brother. He didn't want him to worry for nothing. So what are we going to do now then, sensei? Well, Kakashi-sensei shifted a little, taking a better posture. For now, I think we should continue gathering as much information as possible, as in this situation, knowledge is power. And let's keep our eyes open. According to Prime, and I don't think he's lying, those Decepticon fellows probably won't be leaving us alone. Naruto suddenly grinned, jumping off of the table. Ha! They can try and catch us. But when we get our strength back, they'll hope they had left us alone then. Kakashi-sensei chuckled, standing up. Sure they will. But now let's get some sleep or we'll never get any chakra back. Sure. And no more sleeping on the floor. Naruto cheered as they went to unpack the bags the teenagers had brought in the morning. The commanding bridge of the Nemesis was silent. Finally. Soundwave was standing in front of the computers, dark visor reflecting the dull lights of the displays. Knockout had just recently left, and during the medic's presence the communications chief had been forced to listen the Red Mech's complaints about how tedious it had been to fix the scratch on his face the puny human had caused and threats how the medic would rip him apart limb by limb when he would get his hands on the stranger. The doctor had not been even slightly slowed down by the fact that Soundwave had pretty much ignored most of what he had said, though he had recorded it for possible later use. But despite annoying medics, the Gray and Blue Con had been able to concentrate on his work. This was finding out as much as possible about the troublesome strangers and that portal energy. The weapons had been an interesting discovery. Mainly because after doing some research about human melee weaponry, the chief of communications had quickly found out that a kunai, which was what the knives were called, without a doubt was a weapon that hadn't been used on Earth in a long time. And a fascinating fact was that the daggers definitely weren't hundreds of years old. They were rather recently made, for such a primitive weapons, and very recently used. There was no way these knives were some old artifacts. And above all, they were weapons often associated with special assassins and soldiers called ninjas who had operated in a certain country on this planet some hundreds of years ago. Of course that itself didn't mean anything. Any lousy human on the face of the earth could have made replicas of a kunais and throw them around. That probably would have been the most likely case if Soundwave hadn't found out something even more intriguing. That ground bridge-like energy. Or more accurately, the dimensional portal. It had taken some time for the communications chief to reveal the secrets of that energy. It was similar to one of a ground bridge, but there were some slight differences. Like the sheer amount of energy, for the start, was quite amazing. The dark-colored mech doubted the Decepticons had even a fraction or so of the amount of energon needed to open, let alone to maintain such a portal. Had it been some kind of a random occurrence? Soundwave didn't think that was likely. Then had it been opened by the strangers? Although according to Knockout's description of the two humans, they hadn't come across as that powerful, using just ineffective melee weapons. However, that didn't mean they couldn't have done it, as such a power was doubtlessly taxing. And then there was the question of from where the portal had been opened. With a power that great Soundwave didn't for a moment doubt it couldn't reach even farther than a fully operating space bridge. Very much farther. He had gotten even more clues about the situation when he had remembered the incident not so long ago when the human kids in Starscream's dark energon-powered skyquake had accidentally entered the other dimension caused by the too closely situated ground bridges. Dimensional portal. Huge amount of energy. And a couple of weapons that hadn't been used actively on Earth for hundreds of years. Adding all those to the equation, the communications chief had formed a quite fascinating theory, which with no doubt, was correct. Yes, Lord Megatron would certainly be more than interested. Well, that's the ending of that chapter. I do hope you enjoy this video. If you like to see more, remember to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel and leave a comment down below. Until next time.